What if the Earth has been hiding things from us this entire time?
I don't believe my eyes.
And the only reason we are finding them now is because something wants us to.
There it is. Stunning.
From mysterious doors to unusual rocks, these are places found that will genuinely change how you see the world. Deep inside the Nevada desert, an explorer stumbled across something that genuinely puzzled him. A massive rock hovering above the ground with zero support underneath it, defying everything we understand about basic physics. But the rock itself wasn't even the strangest part, because when he crouched down to look beneath it, the sand was covered in perfectly formed circular patterns that looked almost deliberate and ancient. He reached in and pinched the sand, watching the markings vanish completely, but within moments, they began reappearing on their own, like something underneath was constantly redrawing them. And to this day, nobody has a real answer for what is actually happening there. Otherworldly structure. A tourist wandering through the Iranian desert came across this giant black structure in the middle of the sand, and just the sheer size of it makes you wonder how on earth anything like that ended up in such an empty, unreachable place with nothing around it for miles. Getting closer only made things stranger because the material it was made of didn't match any metal, stone, or known substance that exists anywhere on this planet, which honestly leaves very few comfortable explanations for where something like this actually came from.
This is a building under the sand.
Golden Door. High above the red rock cliffs of Utah, a guy pushing his new drone to its absolute maximum range captured something in his footage that stopped him completely cold. A glowing golden door, perfectly and precisely carved into the canyon wall, at a height that no ordinary man could reach without a very deliberate plan to get there. Everything about its craftsmanship points to a civilization far more advanced than anything our history books have given credit for. But the thought that truly makes this discovery impossible to brush off is that someone might have been waiting on the other side of that door for a very long time. Flying structures. A group of friends driving past Area 51 near the Nevada desert were just having a normal road trip when one of them looked out the window and spotted something strange hovering in the air. These dark, jagged structures were just floating there above the desert floor, completely still and completely silent, shaped unlike any aircraft or drone or anything that exists in any of human-made flying technology. Every rumor ever attached to Area 51 suddenly feels a lot less like fiction after seeing what was hovering right beside it that day. Mountain Mystery. A hiker pushing through the Himalayan peaks stumbled across something half buried in the snow that genuinely stopped him in his tracks. A dark, perfectly shaped pyramid structure there in the ice, like the mountain itself, had been hiding it on purpose for a very long time. The unsettling part is that only the very tip of it is visible above the snowline, meaning whatever this structure truly is, the majority of it is still buried deep underneath the Himalayas. Space beneath hole. Deep in the Sahara Desert, a man stumbled across an ordinary-looking hole in the ground and peered into it. But what he saw at the bottom shattered every rational explanation he could reach for. Because instead of Earth and darkness, there was open space, a deep purple galaxy, floating rocks, and the glowing curve of the Earth hanging in the distance like a view from somewhere far out in the universe, leaving the terrifying possibility that this simple hole in the desert sand is actually an open portal, punched straight through to the other side of everything. Strange markings. A hiker making his way through the forests of Mexico came across a site that looked less like a natural landscape and more like something deliberately left behind by a civilization that we have completely lost track of, with enormous snake figures and giant ancient human forms carved directly into the rock face beside a waterfall, so detailed and so large in scale that no ordinary hand tool from any period we know of could have reasonably produced them. Whoever built this was trying very hard to leave a message for whoever came after them. Lightning hole. Out in the open desert of Jordan, a man came across a hole in the ground that was giving off a pulsing blue light from deep within it. And the strange part was not just the color, but the way the light kept shifting and changing shape on its own, moving like something alive was generating it from far below the surface. The fact that it keeps changing form rather than staying still makes it feel less like a geological oddity, and a lot more like something down there is fully aware that it is being watched. Cloud Maker. A passenger looking out of a plane window over the Swiss Alps noticed something about one particular mountain peak that refused to sit right in his mind. Clouds were pouring off its peak in a continuous steady stream, not drifting past it the way normal weather clouds do, but generating directly from the mountain itself, like something underneath was actively producing them on purpose. This has been happening consistently over the same peak for a long time, and the theory that has genuinely started gaining ground is that those clouds are not natural at all, and that mountain has been deliberately hiding something beneath its surface for longer than anyone has been watching. Al-Nasla Rock. There is a rock in the Tema Oasis of Saudi Arabia that has had people scratching their heads for centuries. And the moment you see it, you completely understand why, because it is split right down the middle into two perfect halves with a cut so clean and so straight that it looks like someone took a giant laser blade to it overnight. Each half sits balanced on its own tiny little pedestal, which is already hard enough to wrap your head around, but that razor-sharp split running between them is what really refuses to leave your mind, because no natural process we know of has ever been proven to create something that precise. Scientists keep pointing at erosion and geological shifting, but that explanation gets harder and harder to accept the longer you stare at how perfectly that cut runs. Laser beam. The Great Sphinx of Egypt has always had a doorway at its base that nobody has publicly explained. But what a visitor captured coming from inside that opening recently pushed the mystery somewhere historians are not comfortable going. A perfectly straight red laser beam cutting through the darkness inside, paired with a sequence of sounds that had no identifiable source. The Sphinx was built thousands of years ago by a civilization that supposedly had no access to any of this, and yet something inside it is actively producing both completely unannounced and completely unexplained. Lightning waterfall. Every February for just a few days, something happens at Horsetail Fall in Yosemite National Park, California, that looks completely impossible until you are standing in front of it. The waterfall cascading down the granite cliff face of El Capitan catches the last light of the setting sun at a precise angle that turns the entire flow of water into a glowing stream of molten orange and gold, pouring down nearly 3,000 feet of rock and looking nothing like water at all. The alignment has to be perfect, the waterfall has to be flowing, and the sky has to be clear, making every year it appears feel like the mountain is putting on a deliberate show. Chained rock. Deep in the mountains of Peru, a massive rock has been chained from multiple sides, like whatever is inside it needed to be physically restrained from getting out, and the chains themselves are thick and rusted enough to suggest they have been holding it in place for a very long time, before anyone thought to ask why. The rock itself has an unusual surface, and unlike any ordinary mountain stone found in that region, which raises the unsettling question of whether those chains were put there to keep people away from what is inside, or to keep whatever is inside from getting out. Hidden bunker.
Oh my goodness. That's an entrance down below. I really don't believe it. I don't believe my eyes.
An explorer pushing through the woods of Hungary came across a concrete hatch hidden beneath the forest floor that dropped into a fully preserved World War II bunker, complete with military electrical panels, a communications room, and detailed tactical maps, still on the walls, with coded operation names written across them. The fact that it had been completely unknown and untouched beneath those woods for decades makes every room inside feel less like history and more like whoever used it simply walked out one day and never came back.
Oh, it's actually lit up. Am I seeing this? Is this real? Is this something that is happening right now?
Creepy structure.
Kids tell me some of the wildest stuff, and they were telling me the truth.
Drivers passing along the Nevada highway began pulling over after spotting something enormous out in the desert that had not been there before. A towering dark structure covered entirely in carved human bodies, skulls, and twisted figures, with a glowing red eye at its center, and long branch, like arms, stretching outward in every direction. Nobody in the area had any explanation for when it appeared, or who could have possibly built something this detailed and this disturbing in the middle of an open desert. And the unsettling feeling it gives everyone who stands in front of it is that this thing was not built to be admired, it was built to announce that something is coming.
If you look, there's liquid dripping off the end, so that's part of the steam vapor or whatever they've got in there, so.
Unusual tree. A woodcutter, going about his usual day in the California woods, noticed something off about one particular tree. The branches were whipping around, as if caught in a powerful wind. The surrounding trees stood perfectly calm, while this one twisted further and further past any angle a living tree should survive, until it finally ripped itself clean out of the ground, roots pulled free and all, sending the woodcutter running without a single look back.
What is happening to just that one?
Giant door. A group of YouTubers out filming in the mountains of Kazakhstan captured something through their drone that none of them had any explanation for. A large arched door carved directly into the rocky mountain face. The footage spread quickly, and people landed on completely opposite ends of the debate, with some firmly calling it the door to hell based, while others believed something far older and far more mysterious was sealed behind it, waiting on the other side for someone brave enough to actually go in. Giant hand. Out in the deserts of Mexico, an explorer came across a massive hole in the ground that looked strange enough to walk over and investigate, but nothing could have prepared him for what was sitting inside it. Chained up at the bottom was an enormous hand, so big it could only belong to something gigantic, and at first he thought it was just some kind of old structure or buried statue left behind by an ancient civilization. Then one of the fingers moved, and that single motion told him that whatever was down there, chained and buried beneath the Mexican desert, was still very much alive, and he didn't wait around a single second longer to find out what it wanted. Green stone. Walking through the Mojave Desert in California, an explorer came across a perfectly cube-shaped stone that immediately felt wrong, sitting there in the middle of nowhere with this deep, glowing green color that no natural rock or mineral found anywhere in the United States actually has. The locals around that area were completely certain that it had not been there before, almost like it had simply appeared out of thin air overnight without anyone seeing it arrive. Locals believe something does not just show up in the middle of a desert without a reason. Rocky door.
Someone put this in, I guess, but tell me they don't look like a door.
The rocky cliff faces of Hawaii are not exactly where you expect to find a perfectly shaped door cut cleanly into solid red rock, but that is exactly what one explorer came across while making his way through the mountain, with edges so precise and so deliberate that every natural explanation falls apart the moment you look at it closely. No record exists of anyone ever constructing anything in that part of the mountain, which makes the two questions nobody can answer: who built this door, and what has been behind it all this time?
Someone put this in, I guess, but tell me they don't look like a door.
Rock ball. The coastal cliffs of the UK have been for centuries, but they have been keeping something hidden in plain sight that a local finally noticed on an ordinary walk. A flawlessly round ball of rock pressed directly into the cliff face, with a smoothness and precision that stands completely apart from every jagged and weathered inch of stone surrounding it. The question of what force, or what hand, embedded something that precise into solid cliff rock has never been answered. Secret chamfer. A drone cutting through the dense woods of Mexico captured something embedded in the rock face that had been completely invisible from the ground for centuries. A precisely carved doorway leading into a deep hidden chamber, so well concealed that it took a camera at exactly the right angle to finally expose it. Locals who climbed up to investigate found the inside far more structured and intentional than any natural cave, pointing to something deliberately built and sealed away, leaving the unsettling question of whether whatever was meant to stay inside that chamber actually did. Waterfall gateway. Behind a rushing waterfall in the Italian grottos, a man spotted something the water had been hiding for who knows how long. A narrow door-shaped opening cut directly into the rock face, perfectly framed with a darkness inside that revealed nothing about what lay beyond it. He got close enough to see it went further back than any natural cave formation would, but never stepped through. And honestly, that decision makes complete sense, because something about the depth of that darkness behind an ancient sealed doorway makes it feel like it was never meant to be opened. Antarctica mystery. When a team of experts in Antarctica broke through the frozen surface and lowered a camera into the hole beneath, the footage that came back up shocked everyone. Because looking through that ice was not darkness or water, but an entirely inverted landscape. Land, formations, and what appeared to be a complete world flipped upside down and existing silently beneath the ice, raising the deeply unsettling possibility that something has remained undiscovered directly below Antarctica for a very long time. Leaked footage. Leaked footage claiming to be from inside Area 51 spread across the internet and immediately divided everyone who watched it, showing long underground tunnels stretching further than the camera could follow, sealed doors, and what appeared to be experimental rooms built far below the Nevada desert surface. Nobody could officially confirm where the footage came from or who got it out, and the debate online between people calling it staged and people convinced it was finally the real thing has not settled down since. Dust Rainbow. Tourists gathered around the ancient pyramid of Chichen Itza in Mexico were treated to something that nobody had a straightforward explanation for. A towering dust tornado rising directly in front of the pyramid with a full rainbow wrapping around it, as if the two were connected to each other on purpose. Chichen Itza already carries centuries of mystery and Mayan energy around it, and watching something like that spiral up directly in front of it made even the most skeptical people in that crowd go very quiet very quickly. Grand Canyon Door.
Here we are in the Canyonlands, near where the Citadel was discovered in the Grand Canyon.
Drone footage sweeping through the rocky walls of the Grand Canyon caught what appears to be a door-shaped opening carved directly into the canyon face. And given how deep and how vast the Grand Canyon actually is, the idea that something has been built into its walls and kept completely out of public knowledge is not as far-fetched as it sounds.
So there it is, Nephilim Door. It's like 50 to 60 feet high.
Asuka Stone. The ancient region of Asuka in Nara, Japan, has been quietly holding some of the most technically baffling stone structures ever found. Enormous granite formations with channels, rectangular shafts, and grooves so precise that modern engineers struggle to explain how they were produced without machinery that did not exist anywhere near the period these stones are dated to. Every theory put forward answers part of the question, but leaves the most important part completely open, because none of them explains who had the capability to cut solid granite with that level of accuracy over 1,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe.
The site of Göbekli Tepe is a series of circular enclosures, but then in the center of each enclosure you have two particularly big T-shaped pillars of limestone, sort of facing each other. Now, many of these pillars have remarkable carvings of animals, birds, insects, all kinds of things.
A shepherd plowing his field in Sanliurfa, Turkey, in 1994 had absolutely no idea that one oddly shaped stone sticking out of the dirt would pull the entire timeline of human civilization apart at the seams.
German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt visited the site and began digging. They realized what was really at this site.
German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began digging and uncovered dozens of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some hitting 20 tons, decorated with carvings that took hundreds of hours each to complete. Dating confirmed the site at 12,000 years old, predating every known civilization by thousands of years, and with no remains, no settlement, and no clear purpose ever found, theorists believe Göbekli Tepe was built by survivors of a lost world.
It's very difficult to know what the purpose of something like Göbekli Tepe could be, and certainly Klaus Schmidt had not reached any conclusions except that it's clearly not a settlement, it's not a village, there is absolutely no domestic refuse.
Door closing moment. A tourist filming the iconic basalt columns of Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland had absolutely no idea that their camera was about to capture something that would send the internet into a complete spiral, a large door-shaped opening between the ancient rocks, visibly closing shut, like something on the other side was deliberately sealing itself away from whoever was watching. Irish mythology has long claimed that the giant Finn McCool built the causeway, and that hidden passages run beneath those columns. And after watching that door close, that legend stops feeling like folklore and starts feeling like a warning. Cryptic monolith. Crowds began gathering in Switzerland after a massive pyramid-shaped monolith with a giant eye carved into its face appeared against the mountain backdrop, drawing people in from surrounding areas who were convinced they were looking at something far beyond a human construction project. The all-seeing eye, sitting at its center, is a symbol that carries centuries of meaning across dozens of cultures and secret societies. And standing in front of something that large and that deliberately designed against the Swiss Alps, a growing number of people in that crowd were treating it less like architecture and more like a message that was meant to be seen by as many people as possible. Chinese lab. Somewhere beneath the surface of China, a vlogger crawling through a network of dark underground tunnels broke into something that immediately did not feel like an abandoned space. A hidden lab complex with sealed, transparent cylinders holding what appeared to be preserved biological specimens, clusters of dusty bottles wired together with tubing, and water-flooded rooms leading further into a facility that has no public record of ever existing. The deeper he pushed into that complex, the clearer it became that the experiments conducted there were operating completely outside of anything officially sanctioned. Hovering stone.
Now this monolith is made out of tough volcanic ash that's been lithified. Above me is this nub.
At the Ushiko Shrine in Hyogo Prefecture, Japan, a stone weighing up to 600 tons has been confusing researchers for centuries, carved on 3 sides with razor-flat precision that the tools of its era could not have realistically achieved, and balanced above a pool of water on such a narrow base that it genuinely appears to hover above the ground. Local legend says it was never made by human hands at all, and looking at the scale and accuracy of those carved surfaces against everything we know about ancient Japanese technology, that explanation starts feeling far less like mythology and far more like the most honest answer available. World War II, bunker. Built during World War II and later recommissioned as an underground nuclear fallout facility in Britain, this hidden bunker was designed to keep the government, the BBC, and the Ministry of Defense operational in the event of a nuclear attack, with a radio tower built specifically to reach any survivors left on the surface. What makes walking through it today genuinely unsettling is how well preserved everything still is. Room after room of equipment, wiring panels, and corridors that were built for a catastrophe that thankfully never came, but were fully ready if it had. Strange formation.
Para mí, esta es una de las piedras más raras de Sacsayhuaman.
At Sacsayhuaman in Cusco, Peru, there is a stone curved so perfectly between 2 massive megalithic blocks that it fits without a single gap. No mortar, no adjustment, just a flawless curved surface pressed against 2 enormous stones, as if all 3 were shaped by the same machine at the same time, which is exactly what makes it impossible to explain using any tool the Incas were supposed to have had.
Perfectamente curvo entre dos grandes.
Eye of Sahara. Stretching 50 kilometers across the Sahara Desert in Mauritania, the Eye of the Sahara is a perfectly circular bullseye pattern, so precise and so symmetrical that astronauts used it as a navigation landmark from space, and geologists have never fully convinced the world that natural erosion alone produced something this geometrically exact. What makes it genuinely unsettling is how closely its alternating rings, its overall size, and its geographical position match the ancient descriptions of Atlantis that Plato wrote down thousands of years ago. Giant rock. Finding a massive boulder balancing on top of a rock half its size deep in the woods of California was not exactly what a group of campers expected to come across on their trail, but there it was between the trees, so top-heavy and so narrowly supported that every basic understanding of weight and balance says it should have crashed to the ground a very long time ago. The thick moss covering its entire surface tells you it has been holding that impossible position for longer than anyone around it has been alive, and nobody has produced a convincing explanation for what keeps it standing. Resting giant. A man driving along the Colorado Highway glanced toward the mountain range beside the road and noticed something in the rock face that he could not unsee once he had seen it. A massive figure carved into the cliff that looks unmistakably like a giant human form, with a clearly defined head, shoulders, and body pressed into the stone, as if whatever stood there thousands of years ago simply became part of the mountain over time. Secret-based discovery. Strange glowing objects, spotted repeatedly over the mountains of Peru, pushed a team of experts to finally go up and investigate, and what they found near the volcanic peak was not a natural phenomenon, but what appeared to be an active base of some kind, with the ground itself showing signs of heat and activity that pointed directly to something operating underneath that mountain, completely out of sight and completely undisclosed to the outside world. Mysterious marking.
So I'm at the entrance of a cave, and it's completely fire blackened. It has ancient symbols inside it. Show these symbols. You can see there's carvings and there's paint in there.
A vlogger exploring the rocky landscape of Peru crawled under a cliff overhang and found strange markings pressed into the rock surface that immediately divided everyone who watched his footage. With one side firmly convinced they were looking at ancient human symbols left behind by a civilization we have lost all record of, and the other side just as firmly convinced that no ancient human hand produced something that precise and that unusual, pointing instead towards something that was never from this planet to begin with.
Those vertical marks right there, as you can see, those are ancient symbols. And we'll move down a little bit. You can see there's more paint and there's more symbols carved in.
Giant headstone.
Word spreads quickly, and locals begin to gather around it, unsure of what exactly has been found.
A farm worker in southern Mexico, swinging a machete through jungle brush in the 1860s, had absolutely no idea that what his blade hit underground would eventually rewrite everything. Archaeologists thought they knew about ancient civilizations in the Americas, because buried in that soil was a 9-foot-tall, perfectly carved stone head, and it was only the beginning. Matthew Sterling later uncovered 16 more heads.
Sterling locates the statue and then begins excavating around the area. Soon, he digs up more heads. Many more, 17, in fact, the largest of which weighs around 40 tons.
Some weighing 40 tons, all transported 50 miles through dense jungle from the Tuxtla Mountains, dated back 3,500 years, and deliberately positioned with a specific purpose that nobody has come close to identifying. Hidden Palace. A man testing out his brand new drone over the woodlands of the UK was just checking what the camera could pick up when he spotted something inside a massive cliff cave opening that completely changed the direction of his afternoon. A fully constructed concrete building with solid walls, structured roofing, and deliberately sealed entry points built deep inside the rock where no one walking below could ever see it. No public record exists of anything being constructed inside that cave, and the fact that it took a brand new drone flying at just the right angle to finally expose it makes you wonder how long it had been waiting to be found. Gas station mystery.
What's up, guys? It's Ronan and Connor again, and today we're going to be exploring the nuclear bunkers that surround this Cold War Army base.
What looked like an ordinary gas station in the middle of nowhere was quietly sitting on top of something that nobody on the surface had any idea existed. A deep underground network of enormous cavern rooms and a massive crystal clear lake buried nearly 170 feet beneath the ground. A group of explorers tipped off by the station owner crawled through gasoline-scented tunnels, swam across freezing water with no wetsuits, and navigated passage after passage that kept opening into rooms bigger than anything they had prepared for, eventually reaching a lake so vast that even standing at its edge, they could not see where it ended. Antarctica, secret. While browsing Google Maps, a man zoomed into the frozen landscape of Antarctica and found something embedded in the ice that no satellite image of that region was ever supposed to reveal. A clear and deliberately shaped doorway cut into the snow, raising the immediate question of what exactly is being accessed through it and why something that visible has been allowed to remain on a platform that the whole world can openly search. And now, let us move on to our subscriber pick of the day.
One of the most popular places to take a picture in Colorado Springs was actually a hotspot for tourists 100 years ago.
Not much has changed, we're finding out. We're learning about a fun-filled fact in our city's history every week to celebrate our sesquicentennial.
700 tons of rock balancing on a base, so impossibly narrow that engineers presented with its dimensions on paper would say it cannot stay upright. And yet, there it stands, in Garden of the Gods, in Colorado Springs, exactly where it has been for longer than any record can account for. The controversy that erupted around its 150-year anniversary was never really about preservation. It was about the question that the geological erosion explanation has never cleanly answered, how something that heavy and that precisely balanced ended up exactly where it is without any help.
All the land surrounding balanced rock, that used to be owned by a guy named Paul Gerke, and it was his mission to make a hefty profit.